it's a challenge, but he has not risen to it. He really has.
How difficult a decision was it to stand?
To stand is a no-brainer. I'm only half joking when I say this is a real job. And don't misunderstand me. It was a privilege being an MP, and it really is, and I enjoyed doing it. And you do have some influence, of course you do, but you're not, unless you're very, very fortunate, you get a private member's bill through or something of that sort, which can make a difference on the big scale. For the most of the time, it is obviously useful to represent your constituents as individuals and as families and as communities. It's also useful to get engaged in. I was on the Transport Select Committee, I enjoyed doing that. I was on the Environment Select Committee, I enjoyed doing that. But you're having influence. Here you have responsibility and you can actually shape things. And albeit, okay, it's only in one city in a sense, only in one city. My goodness, you can actually make a difference. And particularly in Leicester, I came here as a student and fell in love with the city during the time I was here as a student. Decided to stay on here, make my home. It was a time when Leicester was changing dramatically. It was, the Uganda nations had arrived. There's lots of other new communities setting up here. It's an exciting place to be. No reason to go back to suburban North London. And so I loved the place. I enjoyed being council leader. Privileged to be an MP, but to come back and be mayor.
Okay, well this is the starting gun.
Yep. And quite a number of my grandchildren seem to get on that one as well, actually, I noticed.
Apparently you're really interesting, Peter, according to this lady sitting over here. The power of Twitter is you can find out whether the rooms are interactive.
Well, all I want is their photo to come up. See who's saying what.
So this was really for, I think probably Simon would agree with me, probably Andy, this was like a bit of a starting gun for us, because suddenly this is all going to get rather interesting. We'd never really covered anything like this before, so that's me always. Who took these? Was it you? Did you take these? I don't think it was Andy, it might be a good time. So this was our...
It's not very well composed, so it's probably one of mine.
There's no rule of words in there, isn't there? I think what people will find as well, and the reason I know most of the Mercury photographers now, or any of the photographers for like the Leicester link, is because I've got so many photographs of them doing their job, and they kind of know John's going to take a picture of us again. I've got great pictures of people laying on the floor and all sorts of stuff. So now I want to come on to this bit. So it's not necessarily the story, obviously, because it's your image there, but I want to come on to a real development role, or the point where Citizens Eye really kind of changed, I think, direction. We've been bimbling along with our blog, our site, and we've been dabbling with Panny Radio and doing some programme with Eva FM and sort of building partnerships with people locally. And the opportunity to get involved with the Mercury of really the vision of Keith Perch and the former editor. And when I remember when speaking to Keith, he very much was, when he'd come from the digital division, he was responsible for the local people brand that Northcliffe was developing. And I think when he moved to get involved in the Mercury, correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, Mark, when he moved to this, it was very much that Citizens Eye was pretty much the vision that he'd had for local people, and that's why he was quite keen. And I think he'd kind of tasked you to go off and build relationships with people like the internet, hadn't he? So.
Yeah, I think that's when we first met, John, really, when I was looking round. It didn't take me long to bump into you.
Well, I'm hard to avoid running down the street.
I've said to John quite on a number of occasions that actually what Citizen Eye does is not in competition with the conventional media. It complements what they do, and actually, the ability really of the two to work together, obviously with the printed medium, but also with the broadcast medium. With Radio Leicester and others who do radio.
And they've been very good this week.
It's all complementary. None of it is competitive. Interestingly, over the years, you've actually seen the Mercury and Radio Leicester recognise that they are complementary to some extent.
Yeah, that's right.
Because at one time, one would never mention the other.
No.
And they saw themselves as competition. Well, they're not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Actually, they very significantly complement each other, and that's. First it was a relaxation of the relationship, but now I think it's a recognition that there's a lot to be gained, not just by mentioning each other, but by each other, continuing to, to thrive.
Well, BBC Radio Leicester have been very supportive this week with Community Media Week and Doc Film. They're showing documentary films this afternoon and after 4 days at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. and we ran a smartphone news gathering apps session this morning. I think there was about 19 people for that, which was very good, so it's been great, and they're creating content which will be on Jim Davis's show tomorrow, so it's been brilliant to work with those guys. And I think this really, I think it was about sort of for 15 months we did this, and during that period of time we did Wave as well, didn't we, Tina, the country's only young people's newspaper, which gave us an opportunity to work with some fantastic young reporters and journalists, and under the guidance really of Mark, we were able to, I think, make that quite a successful thing. And I think we all got letters back from Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister. We got a letter back from Buckingham Palace as well. So that was really good. Now what we're going to do off the back of this is, you'll see over there, there's a newspaper style programme for the week, and the reason behind that is we're looking to work closely with partners like Simon Bryan from We Are Epic, who's a former Mercury journalist himself.
I thought I recognised it.
To be able to set up the Citizens
old school.
Old school.
The BBC in America didn't speak to you.
Well, and I am right, aren't I?
No, you are right.
I thought I was, yeah.
So we're looking to get a sort of monthly, hopefully, newspaper going, which will be commercial, but it will be free, and sort of, stand next to Mercury Metro people and frighten the life out of them on corners with people with jackets on with big Citizens Eye logos on it. But again, it's about giving people the opportunity to find their voice in the way that they want to and stuff. I think one of the radio stations that we're actively building relationships with, and with Johnny has come down from Dusk Till Dawn, thank you very much, been great supporters of us, is Rob Watson, who's come from Demon FM today.
Oh, yeah.
And with Cuttlefish, who've built our free iPhone app, we've set up the Leicester Media Network, and so it's been good to reach out to other FM providers as well as BBC Radio Leicester. From your point of view, Rob, where does kind of Citizens Eye fit with your community half of the licence? Because you're not really a student station at all,
No,
are you?
I mean, we're dominated by the kind of, it was a challenge for us because we're based at De Montfort University. Student radio, I mean, they've all gone down to the Student Radio Awards tonight, so student radio dominates it, and it's reminding people of being that actually we have a whole other side, and we're building up our, kind of gradually building up our capability in terms of news. So we're probably on the kind of tipping point where we can start. We've talked for a long time about doing more things together and kind of having a kind of news network approach where we can share and collaborate more with things. And we're probably 6 months away from being able to really kind of push that out. So, and it's the grassroots story, because to some extent, kind of the BBC Leicester and stuff doesn't really cover anything for that age group. So we cover kind of 16 to 30, and stories told by young people for young people is a good challenge to kind of work on, I think.
I think one of the interesting things of doing Citizen Eye over the last 5 years, and I remember Tony Wadsworth being interviewed when he was standing in for Rupal Rajani, who was probably at BBC Radio Leicester one of our very first advocates, if you like. I used to go on monthly as John Coster from Citizens Eye, and I was always quite impressed with that. She was never quite frightened about that at all, and she said it was because we kind of went out and met people, and she quite liked that. We kind of brought stories from people in. And Tony Wadsworth, and I think Simon's mentioned it as well, it's almost like, I don't think this is new, this is what people used to do. I think we've just found an easier way of doing it by wrapping it up with volunteering and going into partnership with people like Rob from Action Homeless for getting lottery funding for Downlight Out, and Gaynor moving into Gaynor's Apex building with a newsroom. We're trying to give people this kind of confidence through creating community media. Cool, right, I'm just going to stop selling now, so I'm moving. Okay, there we go. So, it's a sales pitch. You'll get a car and a set of car keys, and you'll be able to drive off at the end.
That looks like a hustings meeting.
Now,
one of many.
Now, I think what's quite interesting there, from all the other pictures that I've ever seen of you, you're very hunkered down already. I think that was quite an interesting one, Rob, because it was your idea, wasn't it, to kind of to stage it and stuff. What do you remember of it?
Well, I remember we'd just been working for a couple